Welcome to Writer Syndrome, podcast about writing from start to finish. This week's episode, we're going to be talking about beta readers and getting feedback. I'm Russ Capasso, and joining me as always is Tim Letney. Tim, how are you?
I'm good, man. I don't know what it's like to get feedback yet, Russ, actually.
No? Oh,
no,
yeah.
All the people that I've sent my beta draft to just haven't responded.
Is that a push? I'm feeling a subtle push there on me.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were one of the people.
I am one of the people. Yeah.
Oh, I totally forgot that I was just waiting here on fire for your thoughts and feedback.
Yeah.
In this holding pattern.
For my burning critique of your whip.
I just want all gold stars, just fluff me up.
It's fantastic. Send it out now. So we're going to talk about beta readers getting feedback. So I was thinking, we kind of didn't talk too much about this, but I figured we'd break this out into let's talk about finding beta readers and doing that, approaching that. And then I figure feedback, we'll do like a receiving and then giving feedback. Cause I think there's kind of two ways of handling that stuff. Mm-hmm. But we're also both we're in different phases of this right now for our first book. So I just received my editor's feedback, which is crazy. So I've gone through 2 rounds of beta readers, and then I've gone through 1 round of, I guess you'd call alpha readers, the first folks you'd read.
Didn't you do more rounds of beta readers than 2?
No, I just did 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I did 2 rounds. So
how many people total was it?
So the first, I'm glad you asked that. I pulled my stats this morning. It's almost as if we're organized. No, so my first round, I sent it out to 8 people, and I got feedback from 3. And then the second round, I sent it out to 9. Some were repeats there from the 8 that didn't get to it. Second round, I sent it out to 9, and I got back from 5.
So back to that first round where you sent out 8, and you got 3 back. Did you stop talking to the people that didn't respond to you?
They're dead to me.
Dude, it's like not going to visit somebody's baby. It's like, yeah, maybe you don't want to do it, right? Because you've seen babies.
Yeah.
You've seen books, but you make the time and you get it done.
Yeah, you got to go.
If anybody out there who's listening who hasn't gotten Russ back his first round of feedback,
you're on the hook. You
got to actually get an updated draft because it's changed significantly.
it's completely. Well, it's funny you mention it because I've had friends who reached out to me and said I'm so sorry I haven't got to it. It's okay. I understand. And they're like, I'll
no, it's not okay.
Yeah, I'm like, no, it's not. You're dead to me. Go away. I've unfriended you on Facebook. But they've reached out to me and said, I'm going to get to it. I'm like, don't bother. It has changed so much from what you've got. So just wait. I'll put you on the next list. And if you don't get to it, that's fine because I'll have other people.
So then you're not counting so then you had alpha readers too then.
Yeah. If we're going to call the early, it'd be the first people. That's what I'm going with, alpha readers. I don't know. Maybe there's a term for it, but I'm going with the first 2 people that read it was you and another friend of mine. So I started there, and then that feedback was just so huge to shaping what it was. And then I did revisions, and then I sent it out to the first round of 8, made some revisions from there, and sent it out to another round of 9, and started getting more feedback. So you're in the step of kind of, I guess, your alpha readers, right? You sent it to me and Jill.
Yeah, I like calling them beta readers, but I guess it's alpha readers.
I don't know. I guess we can call them beta readers, I guess.
But actually, Russ, I got a quick question for you. So when you sent it out, you had a structure, right? So when you didn't say, hey, here's my thing, read it. You said, well, here's my thing. Here's some cover options. And then you said, here are some formative questions, because you were looking for specific feedback. You kind of gave folks an option to provide guided feedback.
Yeah.
Did folks follow that?
Yeah. So early on doing this, I'd read a bunch of kind of blog posts from various authors about, getting beta readers and how to do this process. And I kind of took that a step further because me, I love spreadsheets and organization. So
yeah, you love that shit.
But one of the biggest things obviously is everyone's like, provide some direction and questions. So what I kind of put together a beta reader package in a way. And I was fortunate enough, maybe I was a little bit early with having cover art, but I had some early concept art. Then I had a questionnaire with kind of a, intro of, here are the things to focus on. Here's what I'm expecting out of this. Also setting a timeline, but also being like, hey, this is flexible in my mind, but here's when I'd like it back. And then I had a questionnaire based on characters, plot. And then for some beta readers, I had specific questions. So I had sent this to some of them, engineering friends of mine. And I was like, hey, can you guys take a look at this, the technical aspect of this? Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else I could tweak? Is there something I could add to it to make it feel more real? Like all of the letters I sent out, there's all via Google Docs. I sent folders out to people with all this stuff. It's like, take a look at the art. And then
so did they all have dedicated folders?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's
so everyone,
cool.
Yeah. Everyone had their dedicated folder and like, custom letter to them being like, hey, Tim, take a look at this stuff. Thanks for doing this, blah, blah, blah. I found it important to do because I think being organized is really important for this process because people are doing this for free, right? They are taking their time to come and see my baby and tell me it's breathtaking, right? Or tell me it's ugly and I've done everything wrong. And maybe I should adopt.
You can fix fiction. You can't fix a baby.
Yeah, right. Or I could adopt something better looking. But so I thought being organized was very important because then it shows that I'm not wasting their time, and I wanted people who receive this to feel like, hey, your opinion it very much matters, and it did. And for me, I thought that was really important. I think it's important for everyone to kind of take it seriously, and it provide direction, because if you just send someone something, be like, give me feedback.
Yeah. Did you have like a litmus test where you would wait for a certain consensus on parts that you would change? Like, so like if 3 or 4 people said, oh, this character, isn't particularly developed, or did you weigh all feedback equally? There's
a certain point where if 3 people start calling out the same thing as being a problem, or if 3 people are calling out something as being very good and they want more of it, it's like, okay, there's a certain point where, the people have spoken kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I need to take a look at it and see like, okay, is this important for the story? Do I need to make those changes? I put more weight on the stuff that was bad, obviously, the stuff that was more critiqued. And at that point, it's like, okay, underneath, I knew the strengths and weaknesses I had. Having that as kind of reinforcing my own thoughts on what I had been working on was just like, okay, I need to focus on this area first, because this needs the most fixing. So
did you notice a change from your first round? Obviously you did from your alphas because your piece was a lot different, but from round 1 of beta to round 2 of beta, were they giving completely different feedback on different parts, different characters, or was it similar?
It was similar. It was a little more refined, I think, in the second round, because I'd taken the stuff I got from the first, did as much as I could with it. And to be honest, I'm still learning. And I got to a point where I actually don't know how to fix some of these things. I actually don't know what to do, and I think at that point I was like, I think it was okay. I just put my hands up and I was like, all right, I either got to get this professional editor or someone in the next round is going to like hit a note that I'll be like, okay, that's what I need to do to fix this. So yeah, that second round, it seemed like the feedback was still in the same areas. Like my third act was still not hitting it right. And, still getting, but it was a little more refined at that point. People were like, this specifically doesn't line up, or this doesn't make sense for this character to make this choice at this point. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see that funnel of feedback kind of get more refined as each revision went out. So
yeah. I mean, I'm so early on, it's kind of hard to even picture myself where you are now, having handed it off to an editor and received feedback. I mean, we talked about this a little bit in our last episode on the fragile artist, just identifying folks. I kept it really close to the chest this time. I mean, I sent it to my wife, and I sent it to you.
Yep.
2 folks that I trust implicitly. 1, to get through it, even though you guys are busy. And I'm still waiting for your feedback. But 2, I know that you'll give me an honest critique while honestly still being supportive, the sensitive flower that I am.
Yep.
Round 2 is going to be interesting because I've got a few folks teed up that are new. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, new in the fact that they're not close friends of mine. They're folks that I've only communicated about writing. They only really know this one aspect of me. They don't have like, you and I have hung out a million times. I know that when you read, or when Jill, my wife, reads my book, you guys have my voice in your head, like literal voice, because you know what it is. And I think that creates a bit of a bias. Mm-hmm. So I was hoping to get some folks that hadn't heard my voice, didn't know me as such a likable boy. So it'll be interesting. Now, I still have some other folks that I'm like friends with. I think so far I've got 5 people lined up for the next round of beta readers. I don't know how many I'll get back.
Yeah.
Some I'm relatively close with. Some are friends that I've kind of drifted away, but I had writing in common with over the years when I was part of writers groups and in Boston in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I'm being honest here, I'm most interested in the folks who don't know me, that can't hear me,
Yeah.
and won't have that implicit bias towards my voice. Yeah, I think that'll offer a purer, more genuine feedback. I don't think they're going to care about my feelings either.
No, probably not. Well, so
Oh
I
no.
mean, you sensitive snowflake, they won't care.
I know, man.
But I think what you're doing is, I think that's really important too, and that's something I wish I'd done more in my first round. Is find people that are a little bit further out, detached from my circle. My first round was, it was what I say, 8 people I sent out to. Like I knew all of them very close, which makes it hurt even more. Those 5 people didn't know. I was kidding.
The ones that didn't respond.
Yeah, the ones that didn't respond.
Oh, man.
Makes it hurt even more. I think it's important for when you do go to that beta reader time and sending it out. One is sending out to a large enough group, but not so large it's not manageable. I think like 10, like I had like 12 people. I had people asking me like, hey, can I get I'd love to read it and give you feedback, which is great. But I was like, I can't send this out to 12 people. It's too much. I can't do that. It's too big. So I was like, 10 is probably about it. I called it down to 8.
And then your attrition rate was what? Your attrition rate was like 60%, 70% for those who didn't follow up again?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to that. I think you're doing the right thing to like get people that are outside your circle that don't know your voice. I did that for round 2 where I had friends of friends. I had like 2 people outside of, like I've hung out with them, but they don't know me that well. Mm-hmm. And I think I was like, okay, this is a good spot to be. Also getting a mixed demographic too, because I have a female lead and I wanted to have male, female people read this. So getting that kind of different feedback from different groups, I think is also important. Don't just send it to a bunch of people who are all just you.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I was just going to say the same thing. And that's probably where my round 2 of beta readers, it's so far as it's probably not diverse enough.
Yeah.
As far as interests, I think it's maybe a little too similar between the folks that I'm sending it to. Yeah. Particularly because my leads, it's a female lead, and it's wonderful. Like sending out to like this alpha round to Jill, I got some feedback on writing as this female lead, and she so far has been very, very supportive, saying that a lot of the instances that I've put in there have rang true to her experience of being a female in the city, of being in her teens and 20s and going into New York and things like that. Yeah. But then again, realizing that her perspective is very unique. She's lived there's a really great, better than even chance that my lead is influenced by Jill, who I've, has been my main comrade for like 20 plus years. Yeah. So it will be interesting and really necessary to get additional female perspectives and, feedback to make sure that I'm delivering on this character and that they are likable enough, and there's enough conflict. I don't think I got enough of that from my beta readers I was hoping. But I guess maybe them not noticing or calling out anything was good. Yeah. So, and you didn't call it out either though, right? That wasn't in your formative kind of spreadsheet of for my questionnaire for when I sent it to a couple of female readers. I was like, hey, can you just call me out if anything feels a little cringy here, or if I miss a mark with maybe how a female would approach certain aspects. Or again, it's also fiction too, so you're creating this character that but I don't want it to feel like dude wrote girl. Sure. Which we covered extensively in our Men Writing Women podcast. But that feedback is important, man. Switching over to like kind of giving and getting, receiving and giving feedback. Mm-hmm. You've done this for me already. Yep. How did you feel when I gave you the questionnaire and all that stuff, that package? And then what was your take on going through and giving feedback? Did you feel like there were some points, because we know each other so well, you could call me out on bullshit and be more direct? Or did you feel like you softened some stuff? Or I probably softened a little bit, but not a lot. So it wouldn't even just be because you're a friend of mine. It's just because you're a human. Yeah. Like I went through in my undergrad and grad, like a bunch of writing and creative writing courses, whether it was about poetry or prose or short fiction or creative nonfiction, whatever that is. Such a ridiculous genre. Great question. It's like Devil in the White City. It's kind of creative nonfiction. So I'm used to giving feedback. Yeah. I think in a way you have to, it's just etiquette. I think you want to be courteous while being honest. Yeah. And not just focusing on all the negatives. And some folks do, right? It's like, oh, they can take it. Here's all the red marks. Yeah. I mean, honestly, folks can't.
Yeah, no.
Even in my day job at the museums, when we're editing other departments, it's a little difficult to see your work that you submitted, just all the negatives. You've got to put a little positives in there,
Yeah.
so folks listen.
Yep.
So when you handed me yours, one, I was super excited just to be able to see it because we talked about it for so many months.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like the curtain was pulled back, and I was super proud of you for sending along and trusting me enough to actually see the thing. But no, I mean, my first feedback was once I got into the second chapter, I was like, dude, this is a book. This isn't just a friend of mine that wrote a thing. This is fiction. I read a ton of books, knowing that every issue that I was coming across were all super fixable.
Yeah.
So no, I was inspired. I was really happy to go by and do a little bit of a line edit, even though you said that wasn't really necessary. It's just kind of how I work.
Yeah. There's stuff there's call out so obvious, like, all right, I just got to highlight this thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the process. I like editing quite a bit. I don't think I'm obvious. I'm not to the scale of, and you can talk about this in a bit, the feedback you received from your actual editor and how nuanced and in detail that was compared to what alpha and beta readers were giving.
Yeah.
Yeah, but any advice as being a beta reader, I would say just be honest and critique, but also support.
Yeah.
And, actually read it and provide feedback. As far as your questionnaire, I think it was helpful.
Was it too heavy?
It was a little repetitive for me.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes I feel like there was certain questions that you pinged a couple times.
Yeah.
Some I think were like formative things to keep in mind while reading. Then it was the experience during, and then kind of how you felt afterwards.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no, it was helpful. It was honestly, and if you didn't send those questions, Russ, I don't know if I would have provided as focused a feedback at the end.
Yeah.
But I do think that spreadsheet that you sent along was helpful.
Yeah. And part of that guide I basically sent to people, the questionnaire, like at the top, I was trying to give a little intro. And then one of the key things I was like, general guidelines was like, any and all feedback is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Just be concise with it and be, and make sure it's like constructive. Like it's okay to ask questions, but just don't say something like this sucks. Like offer it's okay to actually say this sucks. And I even said, I was like, it's okay to say this sucks, but offer some solution or why, or tell me why it does so that I can think about how to fix that. And I think one of my joking or kind of serious like bullet points at the top was, don't be nice, be honest.
Yep. Yeah.
Cause like nice, sure, I like that, but my brain has switched so much to like fix mode that like I just need to know stuff that's bad so I can fix that. And yeah, of course, highlight the stuff that's good, so I'm like I feel good about it, or that I know not to change it. Mm-hmm. But I think being honest is like the most important thing. Concise and honest gets you. It just helps on the other side so much.
I think another benefit of sending along a guide or questions is that it shows your dedication and the seriousness in with which you're taking this work, as opposed to just sending out your draft and being like, read this when you can.
Yep.
So I'd say even if you don't have a ton of questions you want to share, I would recommend sending a few along, or just Google some of the top ones. I Googled some because I built a little bit off of yours, and then added some online. Some of them were really super helpful. Like, did the first 30 pages did you want to keep reading after that? Did any sections feel like a complete slog?
Yep.
Those are things that I didn't come up with on my own. That was just through Google research, but really, really important questions. So yeah, I'm glad I included those.
Yeah. And I think if you're awesome to giving feedback, which I've kind of learned from some of my beta readers did this. Obviously the editor has done more of this, where asking questions and just dropping it right in a section. And you don't necessarily it's great to always offer solutions. So it helps you kind of think it through. But even asking a question of like, why this or why that, it's a great way for the author to kind of work backwards in logic of being like, okay, why is this moment happening? And why is it a problem? Okay, let me go backward in time here and look at like, was there decisions that were made to get here? Does it make sense based on the character and the plot? Yeah. So I think asking questions in specific areas, and that's okay. And I think that's good enough for feedback too, because it kind of puts it on me to think it through,
Yeah, Jill and I, because she's going through, this round. And, in Act 1, she had a couple questions, and I had some kind of hanging sections that there were these kind of just tendons that were stitching other ones together, but in a way they were really just kind of floating. And she did the same thing. She was like, well, why is this here? And why can't this happen further up?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's so important to have a fresh set of eyes on the piece, because there's these things that I'm just completely blind to.
Yep.
I'm like, well, I need this like little lily pad to skip to here, but she can see how, and I think beta readers will be able to see how other things can fit together to make it more of a tight narrative, or more of a compact package.
And at the same time, if someone comes to you and asks for you to be a beta reader, I think it's also okay to, and I think I did this for you as well, and we both did this, was just like asking them, like, hey, what are you looking for? If in case they don't provide some crazy spreadsheet like I would, some crazy templated document.
The spreadsheet's like really worthwhile, honestly.
It really, I thought it was, and it was helpful for me to organize my thoughts as an author too. So then I can go through each one of these questions that are all the same, and then seeing it across the board between everyone, and then I can like collate all that together and be like, okay, this is the stuff I gotta focus on.
And even if it's not a spreadsheet, if it's just a doc with bullets or numbered questions, I think that's fine, but pretty necessary.
Yeah, having something like that, and it kind of comes back to like being organized, and like what you kind of echoed was, it shows you're not wasting your time to do that stuff. But so now on the receiving side of feedback, I think after handing off to you the first round of, I guess, beta readers, the alpha readers, whatever you want to call them, you and our other friend, I think at first I was really sensitive to the feedback. Actually, a friend read it before you, and I got that feedback, and I think I was still like sensitive, fragile artist thing going on there, right? And there was definitely moments of like, what am I doing?
Did you feel like a little
self-doubt?
Like, oh my God, maybe I should not do this anymore?
Yep. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, but at the same time, his initial feedback, like, there's definitely parts where he just called out. He was a little more direct with like calling out the stuff that wasn't good. But then the stuff that he really liked, he was like, this is it. Like, these are the things that are awesome, blah, blah. Yeah. And it really helped shape the book. And I saw it too afterwards, like in seeing his feedback and seeing where the story was going and seeing the characters. And you also just have to get through that. Once you get through that hump and like switch over to the editing side, it's like, you just know that like that feedback, if it's critical and it's done concise and in a constructive way, don't let that monster of self-doubt creep in. Like, use that as fuel to kind of like push through and be like, this is just making it better. And it has. And every bit of critical feedback I've gotten and that I could focus on and change and knew how to fix, it's just made the story better, and I can see it. So, and
I mean, this is a friend of yours that you've known for 30 years or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Some of your one of your oldest friends. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's super supportive, I think, that he got back as quick as he did.
Yeah.
It's not like the other 60% that just never got to the darn thing. He came in with like, even though it was very pointed feedback, I think it was probably very necessary feedback. But I understand that, probably kind of hit you a little bit, in your core, that kind of, oh my God, I'm shook. I've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But great that it motivated you to continue.
Yeah, I was still fragile then. I think I'm slowly getting over that. I'm still a little bit, but this is now, it's such a different process from like that creative, from like, this is fantastic. I'm writing words, and then I'm going to hand it off to people to read, and they're going to love it. That's great. And then they're like, get out of here. Now it's like, now I'm just like, oh, this is the work. This is the job part right here, is the rewriting and taking this feedback and shaping it and making sure it, does it make sense for what you're trying to do and what you're trying to say, and making it work.
Yeah, so the revision process is so interesting. I remember reading like, oh, the draft, like your first draft is one thing, but writing really begins, and most of the work is, through beta feedback and the revisions. And I was like, pish posh, my first draft will be great.
Amazing.
And then I read it and I was like, oh my God. Like,
no.
And then, I mean, it took me as long on my third draft revision as it did to write the whole darn thing.
Yeah.
And that's not even with beta feedback yet. So like, I'm like biting my nails with like, what's this fourth draft going to be? And is it going to be another 4 to 6 months before I get to another round of beta readers? Hopefully not, but we'll see.
I had no idea what I was doing coming into the revision editing side of things. So, and then topping up with beta reader feedback, I really didn't know. I was like just kind of learning as I went. And it's taken me a really long time just because I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't. I'm still figuring out. And I'm like, now going through it, I've learned so much through this, like this whole process. Even that first read through of the first draft, making drastic changes for draft 2. And then handing it off to someone and making even more drastic changes.
Yeah, you changed your POV, right?
Oh yeah. It was like first person.
Was that based on beta reader feedback or
no?
Alpha feedback?
That was just for myself, because I was going through. I was like, this isn't working, and I have other characters I want to touch on here, and I want to be in their head because they're important. I need to really play this who's kind of running who's good, who's bad type of situation. It was fun to jump between them.
Yep.
And my main character was just, he sucked. He wasn't good in the first draft, and he was just kind of lame, and I've kind of fixed that. So I'm actually excited for my friend, the first reader of the first draft to read it now, because it's so different.
Yeah.
The signed hard copy, for Christmas gift. Yeah.
Did some of the beta, so speaking of receiving feedback, from your, few rounds, did that feedback shape where you are now significantly, or was it just kind of cleaning up and tidying?
There's some things that have definitely shaped it. My third act, because it was in a little bit of shambles, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback from that, and a shifting of one of my characters that everyone apparently loves, even my editor, that I need to bring them a little bit more to the forefront, or change the pacing of the chapters, because it would start out where it was like, okay, I had 3 characters I bounced between very early on, and then I stay with just 2 characters for a long time, and then I don't return back to this character who everyone loves until later, and everyone's like, we want more of her.
Yeah, that character really jumps off the page. So I'm glad that your editor echoed the same sentiment. Yeah,
so now it's trying to find a pacing, and this is a good thing for me thinking about for a second book too, of how do I pacing things, and now focusing on when I'm reading a book that's got multiple characters or bouncing between, and making sure the pacing is there. I'm I don't want to totally forget what was going on with the character who I was following in the beginning, and be like, well, you're smiling because I'm smiling because I'm going to give you feedback about your characters.
I do a lot of bouncing.
Yeah, you do, but it's okay. It's okay. And that's not so much like a major rewrite thing. It's actually just pulling some scenes of that character forward a bit. That could cause some timeline logic issues, but
yeah, I mean, I've had an issue with that, honestly. The iteration that you're seeing has been completely restructured because my acts were completely, I mean, we were talking about this before. I had my first act was 50% of the book, and it should have been 20,
Yeah. Yep.
And my second act was smaller than my first act, and it shouldn't be. That's the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. And my third act still is kind of meager, but just looking at where that word count was falling and where the action was falling.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at now is me completely restructuring, trying to figure out how to jump between characters, but not completely screw up the timeline of what's happening and when it's happening. And it's not like a movie where you can be 2 hours earlier.
Yeah.
Which they do when it's it's not working. So they just stick that up on the screen.
Yeah, right.
Maybe I should just start that at the beginning of the chapter.
Problem solved.
4 hours earlier.
Problem solved.
I was smiling before because my daughter, Ivy, my eldest daughter, she has read a little bit as I am writing kind of over my shoulder. And when I finished my third draft, I told her about it. She's like, "Oh, I'd love to read it. Can I be a beta reader?" And I had to toss that around in my head because she's 10. And I was like, "Oh, this is not appropriate." And I was like, "Well, how much would I need to edit to make it okay for her to read?"
Yeah.
And it was too much, so. But I would have loved it, there's, these stories about Tolkien letting his son read The Hobbit and giving feedback. And I would love to include my whole family in this process without scarring them for life.
So that's funny because I had no, so family wise, my mom wanted to read it, and it's of course mom wants to read it, right? And I sent her one of my last drafts. I was like, oh,
my parents have expressed no interest.
She probably had some of the best feedback.
Yeah.
And she wasn't like, oh, this is my son. He wrote a book, Of course she's excited for it, but she came in and she looked at it as if she was an editor, and she's like, why this person wouldn't do this here? This doesn't make any sense. And she was she had her notes. She was all ready, and it was fun because it was oh shit, my mom's going to town in my book right now. He is not holding back. There's no punches being held back here. So
that's a thumbs up then for sending it to including family in the process, you think?
Yeah, I think there's a line. I knew she wouldn't hold back. Of course, she's going to have a super supportive angle to it, but she called out some parts because there is a part, a mother, son kind of moment in it, and she's like, "No, do you think I would have done this in this moment?" I was like, "I don't know, would you?" She's like, "No." So I that's.
I mean, honestly, doesn't that speak to the value of having a variety of beta readers? If you've got a mother-son moment, great to have folks who are parents in there. If you've got 100%. Female leads, great to have females.
Yes. Yeah. It also doesn't help my mom, worked in the publishing industry for a very long time. So she was coming in it with that brain of this is
actually kind of a tough question, Russ.
Sure.
What about your pop?
Oh
Your
boy.
pop, who has been
Sorry.
so integral to, kind of initiating this process. And I feel
Yeah.
like at the heart of your story, there's like a father-son relationship.
Yep.
You were saying before that, the nugget of the idea came from your conversations with him.
Yeah. He's
Have
been.
have you shared it with your father yet?
I have not yet. He's gonna. he's, if I know my mom and the way she took a look at this, I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, he's gonna, and it's gonna be good. I mean, he keeps saying, he's like, it's your story, and I was like, I know, but I mean, he's also a writer. He's written plenty of business books, and he's come up with ideas, and he worked in the publishing industry as well.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be. I want to give him the best version of it that I can possibly put
So
together.
you're gonna wait until after
once
the
once it's
editors
printed.
edit. Once it's printed. So not a beta reader at all.
I couldn't do that. I
It's
couldn't.
gonna be like a Christmas present.
No, I couldn't.
Because I'll have no opportunity to give feedback. All set in stone, like the Ten Commandments or something.
Oh yeah, Dad. I'll put that in like the second edition, third edition, the third edition.
Yeah, we'll work on the footnotes.
No way. No, I couldn't do that. I gotta no. So I think I just got my first round from my editor. I get this month to basically make all the updates and changes before it goes back to her in the beginning of September. So I'm gonna get it to him. I think before I'll probably send it at the same time I sent it to her for the second round.
Yeah,
because
I'm just gonna say that the core of your book is about communication.
Yeah,
and building connections.
Thanks, Tim.
Between people.
Thanks, Tim.
Might be valuable to include your dad.
Yeah, no, it definitely will be. It's just that feedback is going to be, oh boy, it's going to be good. It'll be positive, but his will be, it'll be good, but it's going to be a lot. Like he will take time off to focus on this full time, all hours of the night. And
so would this
probably
tie
read it
into
multiple
kind
times.
of like you'd be sensitive to that feedback, right? Would you feel more vulnerable to that feedback?
I would, because he will be my harshest critic. He will be my best and harshest critic.
Okay.
And those are two things that are very hard to, I think, juggle, because like he will be the harshest critic, but it will be, and not like in a mean way. It'll just be, and it'll probably be on point, because he'll sit there, he'll read something and he'll be like, and he'll go spend hours researching it, figuring it out, and making sure it makes sense. And like,
well, that's good. I mean, if we're talking about who to choose through your rounds of beta feedback and, the fragile artist thing that we talked about last cast, you want to make sure that you don't derail yourself accidentally, right? So that could have been, not that it would have derailed you per se, but it very much could have been a speed bump. So you want to include him in the process.
Absolutely.
And you want to include him in feedback, but maybe not as early on as some others.
Or maybe I should have, to get it out of the way. Like there's a flip side to it. It's like maybe he should have been one of the first three I sent it out to and gotten that like harsh feedback from it, and been like,
probably not.
But
probably not.
He will have a lot of good ideas. Like, I mean, he's had ideas for this, so it's not like they won't be lost. I mean,
the thing about parents, right, is that even though we are old now, still like when you loop them into anything, it's not the one thing, and then it's like every week, it's like, did you do that thing? It's like, oh, did you? Are you eating breakfast? Are you getting out? Are you getting enough protein?
Yeah, it's a weird form of support coming from
it's
him.
Love.
It is 100%. He wants to see this. He generally wants.
Critique.
He's been sending me. He's like, "Are you going to query this?" He's like been sending me like indie publishers and stuff like that to reach out to, and like,
oh, that's cool.
Folks from different publishers and whatnot to like reach out to, and he's like, "Hey, I'll help you write a query letter." Like he knows how to do this stuff,
cool.
And he'll do that. And he's like, "Hey, if there's anything on your list of to dos like you want to pass along for me to tackle, like send it along," And I'm like going through. I'm like, "Yeah, there are some things in here." Like honestly, I could probably send him as my pit bull to go query this thing, and he would,
Yeah.
Which
That's
is
cool.
great.
Super supportive.
It's 100%. It's fantastic. But I don't know. I'm still figuring this all out and learning where my own
but not during the beta. Right?
Yeah. Not while I'm trying to like get over my,
Because honestly, you're past beta now, right? You've done your alpha, you've done 2 betas, you've gotten your first bunch of feedback back from an editor. I don't know if we're going to talk about that in another episode, like the editing and identifying editor and
doing the editing process.
I think it's a completely different beast than beta feedback. So maybe that should be maybe its own thing. But do you have anything to say about that? Like about the editing process so far, about just very briefly, just the difference in feedback you received, whether it's more detailed or more
As compared to like the beta readers.
Yeah, compared to beta.
Yeah, it's definitely more focused. And it was interesting with this editor. She's been great. She also directed me in a way of like some books I should read about, like character arcs and stuff like this, which I immediately just soaked up and read through. But yeah, it's been a little more focused in areas that I think that beta readers just kind of missed, just because they're reading it through once. Like she's read it through twice already, and really kind of called out some logic issues, questioning some character motivations, calling out some like character things that are a little too cliche, that I wrote in there. She's like, you might want to take a look at this. Like, of course, it's all feedback that I can accept or reject, right? But but it's good to hear that, because like some things, yeah, you know what, maybe this is a little too cliche for this character to be doing or have or behavior.
Yeah. So by spending the money though, like you're getting much more detailed feedback than the folks that you've looped in who are kind of donating their time and to read it and give you feedback. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense to work with a professional editor, honestly.
100%. And yeah, 100%. I think I have, like, as part of it, I have some time to actually just, talk over Zoom with her and kind of walk through some questions I may have based on her feedback. And she gave me like an editorial letter, which that's part of kind of like the content edit, which highlight like my strengths and then some of the weaknesses I need to focus on and stuff that I didn't think about. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is stuff I got to do. But yeah, it's an interesting process, but I'm still in the middle of it. So we'll see. Or I guess I'm at the start of it, kind of. But
dude, I can't even picture getting there right now.
This
seems so far away.
I think you're closer than you think, based on the 30% I've read. So yeah.
Well, it all falls in the trash can after that 30%.
Yeah, well.
No, there's some moments, but there are some slow parts, right? And that's like I'm curious if the moments that I've identified that were honestly kind of a pain to write. Yeah. I wonder if they're a pain to read, and if they're a slog, it's something I'm going to need to address. So it'll be really interesting to see. Yeah, if those land for you. It'd be great if you gloss over them. I'd love that.
Fine tooth comb here. I'm going through this thing. So, but that's everything we've touched on, or that we want to touch on for beta readers and receiving feedback.
And really, just the importance of people getting you your feedback, right, Russ?
Yes, yeah. All those
so
friends.
If you get a moment and you want to send me some,
you know what? It's just one less Christmas card I have to send. Oh, shoot. Yeah. But that's our episode. Thanks everyone for listening. If you have a topic idea or feedback, you can send us an email at chat@writersyndrome.com, or you can find us on Twitter at writer_syndrome. Otherwise, head over to writersyndrome.com for all of our other episodes. You can join us next episode. We'll be discussing To Query or Not with our first guest. I'm excited.
All right.
I'm excited. We have a guest. Holy smokes.
We got a guest. We're legit. We're legit now. People want to hang out with us.
Absolutely.
On Zoom.
On Zoom. Not in person. Definitely not in person, but on Zoom. So yeah, we have our first guest, published author M.D. Payne, known for the middle grade series Monster Juice. So pretty excited about that. So until next time, keep writing.